Hello, and welcome back to the third episode of the Everyday Disciple podcast with me, Seth Burris, and my guest today, Cassie James. Cassie, how's it going?
I'm here. I'm upright. We're good.
Yeah, well, that's exciting. Before we get started, let's go ahead and do a segment on our sponsors. We'll start with Hydra Girl, Respectful Delicious, Dangerously Drippy. It's time to grip it, rip it, and look good doing it. Golf just got good. Sasquatch Ben Oil, the only oil tough enough for your gear and smooth enough for your beard. Protect your tools, your weapons, and your legacy with the power of the Squatch. And Pretty Good Wood Turning, handcrafted, purpose-built, and always pretty good. From pins to prayer bowls, every piece tells a story because craftsmanship still matters. And, of course, our friends over at Faith Points TV, where faith meets everyday life. You can also catch the Foundational Fathers podcast airing weekly right there on Faith Points TV. So, Cassie.
Hello.
Thanks for coming.
You're welcome.
So, people who don't know,
I'd
like to introduce you a little bit.
Yeah.
We can get to the connection here later. But tell people kind of, what do you do?
My name's Cassie James. I am a chaos coordinator. I'm a preschool teacher. I've been doing that for about 8 years now. I've been friends with Seth for a long time. Also married to Roger, who was here last week. So
yes.
And I'm here to talk about our marriage for real. No, I'm kidding. I'm not.
Yes, Cassie's expertise is in handling small children.
Yes.
And her husband.
Yes.
So
who's also a small child. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. People can't see that he's 5 feet away from here. So, So, you and I have known each other for probably 7 years now, something like that.
Probably since you and Roger started living together.
Yeah, so
probably when that kind of started.
That'd be more like 9 years ago now.
I feel like it's been a long time.
Yeah, because you guys have been married for a little over a year now.
A little over a year. Yep.
How's the first year been?
Still married. Yeah. So pretty good.
Okay.
It's good. It's good.
This is nice because your episode and his are airing back to back. So
yes.
I asked him the same questions and people can.
I listened to it yesterday. So I'm ready.
You're coordinated already. Okay. Good. So we brought you on today to have kind of a fun conversation. When I first started doing this, I talked to Marcus and Nick a little bit about what are the kind of topics that you want to talk about? And some of this stuff, I was like, yeah, this is fine to have me and Marcus or me and somebody like Roger or Cody on for. And then one of the ones that we brought up was the ideas of navigating the dating world as a young adult who's a Christian. And as soon as I started any prep for it, I said, this is not a conversation that can just be me and another guy. And so I started thinking about it. I was like, well, who's somebody that I know who can speak to some of this stuff?
Yeah.
Who is a woman. And you were the first person that came to mind, in part because we've known each other long enough. Also, I was still living with Roger when you guys were dating. But for just some context a little bit, you and I both have kind of had the experience of what it's like when you don't meet your person at 19 or 20. And some of the, trying to think of the appropriate word, some of the ridiculous nature of trying to date as a young adult who's a Christian today. So I think the thing that I wanted to kind of start with is just talking a little bit about what that transition initially is like from both of us were, I think you were, what year did you, I know you, so sorry. I know. That's, I know. Nice. You're a year and a half older than me, something like that?
I'm 33.
Okay, so almost 2 years. So about 2 years.
Yeah.
So, but both of us, I think, have the experience of being a young adult and then finding Jesus.
Yeah.
And kind of that all of a sudden a lot of your priorities change
Mhm.
in all aspects of life.
Mhm.
And then you start, I think the thing that's very interesting is like there's that initial high moment when you first really come to Jesus of
Mhm.
like, everything's wonderful now.
Yeah.
And then God starts going, okay, I want you to trust me with stuff. And that like sometimes it's very small things that you're like, oh yeah, this is easy and it's a lot better
Mhm.
in my life. And then there's things that require you to lean a lot more into him faith wise.
Mhm.
And I think one of the ones that was the hardest for me initially was the first time that I like tried to get into a relationship
Yeah.
where Jesus was supposed to be the biggest priority.
Mhm.
And then discovering that that makes the entire process completely different.
Yeah, it does, for sure.
Um, when you first go into that from a woman's perspective,
Mhm.
what do you think were the biggest priority changes for you as far as like going into the dating world from before you had a relationship with Jesus to now?
Well, so I got baptized at 18. So I actually came into college as a Christian, but a very baby Christian and also someone who just did not know a lot about what was going on. So I had a good, solid, almost 7, 8 years of being a Christian, but not really giving everything to God. So I feel like I was part of Christian ministries. I had a lot of Christian friends. But my biggest thing was I had a really hard um, habit of putting every relationship or possible relationship ahead of God. And that slippery slope of making the significant other your idol instead of God. And that was always something that I really struggled with. Also, the shift of the mindset of I don't have to have somebody. I
Mm-hmm.
think for a long time I struggled with, well, what's the purpose of this if I don't have a husband or if I don't have a boyfriend or things like that. Like that where churches talk about how you don't have to wait until you're with someone to start making a difference and start serving and things like that. Um and yeah, and I remember being when I didn't have my first Christian relationship after becoming a Christian until probably about 7 or 8 years later after I was baptized. And I really thought that was a Christian relationship. But really, the only thing I felt when I look back on it that was Christian about it was that we both said we believed in Jesus. I feel like a lot of it, when I look back on how it was not that way. And so I think the biggest shift for me was the conviction also that came with a lot of the mistakes I've made in dating and just in relationships, or I guess what the cool kids call situationships. I really struggled with really giving all of that to God and finally being like, you can have it. So I think just putting him at the forefront was the biggest shift that I had to make.
Yeah, I think I can speak like I know for me the approach that I started to take with it was I think there's very much a point of view that you start to get as like God's I believe that God wants good things for all of his children, but he
Hmm.
doesn't guarantee that you're going to get everything that he like that you're just going to get everything you want right away.
Yeah.
But the mistake you can get into is going, oh, when something shows up as a potential opportunity, whether it's in dating or anything else,
Hmm.
going, oh, you just deciding, oh, this is God giving me that thing.
Yeah.
And so I had a habit of immediately being like, oh, God has provided my
Here they
person.
are.
Here they are. And so we've been on 2 dates and I have already decided
That's
this is
right.
who I'm going to marry. And especially if you have been in serious relationships that weren't God honoring
Yes.
before,
Yep.
and you go in with the mentality of this is the person I'm going to marry now, that's a really dangerous position to
It's a
start from.
slippery slope.
And very fast,
Hmm.
that person can become the most important thing in your life,
Yes.
which, I mean, you can speak to it better than me. Like, even once you're married,
Yeah.
your spouse is not supposed to come before God. And so if
Hmm.
it's a person you've been dating for a couple months that you're that's already a sinful position to be in. And then all of the stuff that comes after that is problematic in so many ways.
Yeah. It's so easy to do too. I mean, it before you know it, you're just right. Well, and I mean, even when I think about like me and Roger, I was borderline obsessed with him for 5 years, to the point where I would annoy Seth and other friends. But honestly, even when we were just friends, I feel like I kind of did that even when we weren't even dating or anything, or when he had maybe respectfully told me no a couple times. I still had him very high up on that list too. And so I think that's one thing too that God was really teaching me in singleness also. And I had gone through some other things too that were really rough, but I do feel like God was trying to like I think I was very much given the task of like whenever you're ready to finally stop being a control freak and just let go of this, I will bless you in that. And I think he was probably sick of me for a while, but I couldn't let go of that for a long time. Yeah. So
So, all right, leaning in first then to the singleness side of stuff. As somebody who is still single,
yeah.
what do you think were the most important things that you either did lean into that you felt like God was able to help you grow during that time?
Mhm.
And what are the things that looking back now you're like, I probably would have made my life easier or like would have grown more if I had made these decisions earlier or
Yeah. Well, honestly, the biggest one was just getting out of the way. I remember, I had this in my mind when I was 18, got baptized, was on fire for Jesus. I would go to college, and I would be married by 22 and kids by 20. The whole deal. And I remember turning 30, and I was like, "Holy cow, I'm gonna be alone forever." And very in my feels, which is a lie, by the way. Yeah, it is a lie. Um, but I remember being on a walk, and I was finally just kind of done, and I just said, "You know what? Like, God, take it. I'm done with it. I don't care if I ever get married. Maybe I'll just be one of those really cool older ladies who lives her life and is single, and I'll accept that, and that's fine, and I'll just be alone. That's okay." And then I feel like a couple months later, that's when the ball started rolling with Roger. And I think one of the biggest things was that I finally just got out of the way, and not that I just was done talking about it, because I still like prayed to God a lot about that, and the intentional praying of not just like the wish list of like, here's what I want, here's what I need, but being able to just say, you know what, this is really something that I want, but if that's not what you want, then I'm okay with that. And that was a huge, I feel like weight lifted for me. I feel like once I finally was like, if you want to do it, great, but I'm just done with it. I'm done holding on to it. Like that was a huge weight lifted off. And I wish I would have done that a lot earlier. Um, Also, my standards in true transparency were very low. Um, I feel like I feel like I really wanted attention for a long time, and it's something I mean I went um, through a regeneration ministry, and a big part of that was because I really struggled with self worth, and I really struggled with the standard of what I was looking for in a husband, and more importantly, in a God fearing husband. And so I wish when I was younger I had respected myself more to know that God is going to bless me with something greater than what I was looking for. So really the root of that whole spiel is just that, and it's very cheesy to say, I feel like, and it's said a lot, but it is true, is that I have no control. And I had this illusion of control that I could pray to God and say, here's my wish list, grant it. And that's just not how it works. And I just feel like if I would have just let go of what I was holding on to so tightly, God could bless me. And maybe that wouldn't have even been in a husband, but maybe it could have been in mission trip opportunities or job opportunities or things like that. I feel like God blesses us no matter the circumstance. And so I just needed to be open to what that was going to be. So,
Yeah, so I think a couple of things that are really important that you said there. Maybe the most important one is uh, the one thing to not take as the lesson is it is not the fact that you like said that you were letting go that
mhm.
led God to, but it's the you reached a point where you actually said, God, if what you're asking me to do is be single, then I'm going to be obedient in that.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
it's the decision to accept being obedient no matter what
Yep.
that opens the door for God to bless you. not I'm going to be obedient until you give me what I want.
Yeah.
And it's because I think that's the mistake that myself and like a lot of other people have made before is like, well, God, I'll be obedient as long as it takes to get what I want. That's not obedience.
I will wait you out.
That's not obedience. And
Yeah.
but it feels like it. And that's a big mistake.
And I think we also underestimate that God knows all of it. So even if I'm sitting here going, I'm gonna give this to you, and in my heart I'm not giving it to you, He obviously already knows that. So I feel like a lot of times we feel like as we can almost trick God into, by saying these nice words or these nice prayers or doing this devotional or doing this YouVersion plan that we're letting this go. And I think we very much forget that God already knows all of it, whether we say it or not. So
yeah, we last Sunday for high school ministry, one of the things that we talked about was fruits of the Spirit and like which one do you think that you struggle with? And I had to think about it for what I said. The conclusion I came to was that the one that I struggle with sometimes is joy, because I feel like there are definitely times in my life where I'm like, I'm going to do this because I know that this is what you're telling me to do. I don't want to, so I refuse to be joyful about it. And
I will be mad.
But the thing is like, even if I'm doing the exact same thing, it doesn't bear the same fruit if I'm not joyful, which means, and I think the thing with joy, one, a lot of people associate joy with happiness. It's not the same thing. But joy is about a heart posture. And I think the hardest thing is to actually shift your heart posture, because that's the one where it actually lets the Holy Spirit be the thing that's running the show. The other thing I think that's important to note about what you said is your standards raised before you and Roger got together. My standards were incredibly low, and then I met
Roger. And I just kept going with the same thing.
That got a sigh.
He's perfect in every way.
So shifting to the thing that I think people will probably be the most interested in, which is navigating the wonderful world of dating inside the church as a young adult.
That's great.
Both of us have had experience with that at times. I'm trying to think of a nice way to put it. I can't really come up with one. I feel like, maybe you'll disagree with me on this, but I don't think so. I feel like once you get outside of the setting of like college age, that young adults in the church don't know how to interact in a way that's like conducive to an environment where people can date. And I don't know that the church does. Multiple churches I've been, I don't feel like that's a thing that gets addressed. And I think part of the reason is nobody really knows how to address
it. I would agree with that. I also think, I think one of the things I think about when I think about dating, being in the age where you're post-college age, I think every stage of life has a lot of question marks. And I think college, even though there's a lot of people in college, I think half of them don't really know what they want to do with their life. But also, I feel like in college, they don't really care because they're having fun. They're hanging out with their friends. They're staying up till whatever, you know what I mean? All those things. But then when you get post-college age, I feel like the adult reality it becomes very real. And it's like, okay, now I have to be a real adult instead of going to school to become one. And so it's a lot of like, what am I doing with my life? But then also the thoughts creep in of like marriage sometime if you're not already there by the time you get through college. And I also think sometimes one of the lies in Christian dating, and I'm going to throw this out because this has been on my mind since we were talking about this, doing this podcast. Proximity does not equal opportunity. Just because you're in a friend group, and granted, I am married to Roger now, and we've spent a lot of time together over the years.
Yes.
But just because we're in the same friend group does not mean that that's your person. And I think sometimes we get in our comfort zones, and I think we get in our groups and we make connections, and connections are great and friendships are wonderful. And I think I've always been, in my mind, kind of a guy's girl. So I've always just hung out with guys and have gotten along with guys, and that's great. But that also doesn't mean that once I get to that stage in life, like, well, which one of them am I gonna, be with? Or like, you also have to kind of expand your horizon, not change your expectations, but you might have to kind of get out there and make more of an effort, and really think through, like, how do you want the rest of your life to look? Because in college, I feel like you're in that, like, small bubble of life where it's just you and your college friends. And if you're part of a church, like church ministry, and like you're really in this bubble. And then when you get to post college, it like gets very, like, that bubble's popped and you're just like
Mm.
in the real world. And I think that's a whole other transition to go to.
Yeah. And like, I do think that you have to change your expectations. You don't change your standards,
Yeah,
but
there you go.
your
Yeah.
expectations for sure have to change, because in a lot of the people that I know who met their spouse in college and are really comfortable telling you that it was almost an accident.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing once you get into the real adult world is there has to be an incredible amount of intentionality.
Yep.
And uh, Christian guys, especially, don't know, I don't think, how to do that in a lot of ways. That's where I think the proximity equals opportunity thing comes
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think one of the things I feel like is a big failure in that a lot of times is that the intention is, because there's a level of inherent awkwardness around it.
Yeah.
The natural response is to avoid any conversation and just expect things to happen.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
And I think the thing that's important to remember with it too is, like, I think one of the biggest damages that you can do to healthy friendships with people is not establishing intentionality immediately. And I know, like, again, just speaking for guys, like for Christian guys, there's just, it can be very easy to build healthy friendships and relationships amongst other guys. But that's the people that you're living around.
Yeah.
When you have friendships with women as an adult there, where everyone is single, if you don't go out of your way to make very clear what your intentions are or aren't, all you've done is cause a person who you care about to feel confused.
100%.
And I wasn't even thinking about running like this. But no, I think that's a very real thing. I mean, probably like 6 years ago or so, like, you and I had one of those conversations at one point, where it was very clearly like, no.
We would hate each other.
But the thing is like, because of that, I think we were able to become much better friends.
Yeah.
And if that hadn't been the case, it would have, again, there's just, even if there's not any interest there, there's that is like, well, who knows? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, I think it's just as important for you to make very clear when you are not interested, and not going out of your way and being like, I think you're gross. But being like, I mean it, I just mean it in the sense of being like, emphasizing the importance of your friendships by being clear that you're intentional about being friends.
Yes. And I will say, from the female side of this, I think also those conversations, even when there's really not even like the possibility of it happening. And like you said, like, don't go out of your way to just say, like, hey, by the way, I just want you to know that in no way, shape, or form would I ever find you interesting, or, any of those things. We obviously don't want to do that, because that burns bridges really quickly. But I do think even in friend groups, yeah, it's very good to make those clear. And on the female side of it, obviously we are a lot more emotional. And I think we also very much I know myself, like, the emotion comes in even when you are friends and it's very clear that you're friends, like, you still want the feeling of, like, they care about me, or there's a care there even in a friendship,
Mhm.
and so I think even when you're just really good friends, making sure that's clear tells me that, like, "Oh, this person does care about me enough to tell me this." And I remember one thing when we were all friends, and even before Roger and I started dating, one thing that he did, which at the time really made me upset because I really liked him, and so this really made me mad. But now when I look back on it, it was a great idea. Anytime we would have a friend group that would want to go eat, or somebody would put in the chat, "Hey, I'm going to go out to eat." If it ever was left to just me and him, we wouldn't go.
Mhm.
Um, and at the time, it really upset me, but I respect it now. But at the time, at first you think of that as like a real, if you're not at a maturity, and I was not mature enough to understand this at the time, but it is a sense of like, hey, I am making that line, not because I think horrible things about you, or but it's more out of like a respect. And I think sometimes in dating and relationships and co-ed friend groups, I think sometimes we take that almost offensively.
Mhm.
Whereas I think if someone is telling you, um, like, hey, I just want you to know, like, this is how I feel, this is where our line is, and that means that there is a care there,
Mhm.
that they care enough to tell you that, because they don't want to lose you as a friend either. And I think sometimes we take, I know for myself and other like women I've talked to in single stages of life, sometimes that's really hard to hear, but it is a very respectful and I think caring thing to do that and not just let it go or let someone get led on. I think it's more caring to put that line there first than to let it go somewhere that it shouldn't. So,
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that I would say is it really is once you've made the thing is like once you have the initial awkward version of that conversation,
yeah,
it makes your friendships better
I agree.
because you can just you can you can lean into that person for advice. If there's one bit of advice that I can give to any of the any like young Christian men listening to this who are still in the dating world, the number one greatest advantage that you could get to it, and this is speaking from a guy who's single, so you know it works, is is
Well,
get a find a female friend who you trust really well, who loves Jesus, who cares about you in that way, because it will be able to give you so much better advice than any of your none of don't trust any of your guy friends. I don't care if they're married. Do not trust their advice as much as the female friends that you have because they're going to interpret things completely different than the way that you do.
mm,
And
yeah,
when you go, hey, I don't understand why this made this person upset, and then you tell them what they said, and they're going to be able to immediately go, well, why on earth would you say that way?
amen. Yeah,
And having have, and I do think that that's true in reverse
it is. It
for
is.
women. I
Yes.
mean, I think there have been conversations. Not, I mean, I may even you and I have probably had a couple of these conversations in the past too, but like I've had it with other female friends where they're like, I don't understand how this person, like how he didn't get what I was trying to say here. And then it was like, I still don't know what you're trying to say in this. I'm going, but being able to reframe it as going, when I hear that, here's what I hear
Yes.
is huge
Yeah.
because and I honestly, I think a big part of it is when you're in the uh, Christian young adult bubble that is in like the college age
Hmm.
era, and especially if you started in like middle school or high school up,
Yeah.
you kind of don't spend as much time with the opposite sex.
Mm, yeah.
And I think that I do think that there's a tendency for you to end up as 23, 24 and not know how to interpret each other as well. I
Yes.
understand,
Yes.
obviously, people who aren't Christians also don't know how to communicate well. But I'm saying
Human beings.
I do think there's a natural separation that happens to a certain extent that makes it a little bit weirder, and then you're trying to figure it out as an adult.
Yes.
And there's almost a feeling, I think a lot for guys, there's a feeling of like I should know how to do this already, so I'm never going to ask anyone to explain it to me.
Mm, yeah. 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 Yes. Yeah. Well, and I mean, I feel like this is a very obvious thing, but I just feel like men and women also just speak very different languages, and not and not in the sense that it's like, well, we just do. I think just naturally, but I think that is why it's important to have those trusted friends, and I think also friends that are going to be also very real and honest with you, obviously in a loving way, but that are just going to say like, "Hey, you should not have said that. That was really not okay." I also think too, always having someone, and this would be someone of the same sex, but also having someone that is older than you,
Mm,
and with the experience, or and honestly, not even just someone who's older and married, even, um, but someone who's like older, obviously a believer, but someone that can help you walk through that also, that might have just a little more maybe wisdom or knowledge or things like that. I know I always love to have like my married women that I talk to, and I have quite a few that I do. But one thing that was really hard for me being single, and I think a lot of people in the church sometimes do this, and I think the intention is really good, but I do think it kind of sends a wrong message. Is that I remember talking to these ladies about being single and how terrible it was, and blah blah blah, and they would always say, "Well, it's going to happen one day. It's going to happen one day. You're going to find some." Right? I had one lady tell me to she got a pair of her dad's old jeans and prayed over them, and then that's how she got her husband. Which I've heard it before, and hey, whatever works for you. I do think we as a church sometimes tell people that things are going to happen, and the reality is they will if God wants them to.
mm,
But if that's not in God's will for you, it may not happen. And I think being single, understanding finally that that could be very real and accepting that was huge for me. Like I said that before, just being like, you know what, I'm done. Like I'm out. I'm done talking about it. Like and I think that is important because it is something you desire. And I do believe that God really wants us to be joyful and happy and have that in our lives, but He also has a plan. And sometimes we don't really understand what that plan is.
mm,
And I think that's a huge thing too, is I feel like we tell people that things are going to happen for them, but we don't really know that. And I think the intention is to be comforting and to not have them lose hope. And I think we don't want to lose hope in God, and we shouldn't, but God is ultimately going to give us what He plans for us.
mhm.
So if there's people out there in the church, stop telling stop telling people that they're going to get married, because they might, and that's great, but they also might not. And I think that's something to accept as a single person sometimes, is that, and the thing is, it's not like a punishment. He may have something totally different in store for you that could be just as amazing and wonderful
Mhm.
as a spouse or marriage. So,
It's not the magic blue jean ceremony is
you
not
know what
the,
though? Yeah, I mean, I've heard that from multiple people. So
that's
apparently,
crazy. I've never heard that in my life.
it's more of a. I think it's more of a
Oh,
female
it
deal.
won't work if I do
You
that
will
with
not.
my
Don't
mom's
get a pair
jeans.
of your mom's jeans. Yeah, I think it's
Okay.
more a female thing.
All right. She watches this podcast, so we'll see. She
Well,
might do that
hello.
for me. Um,
Hello.
okay. So in the same spirit of this,
Mhm.
something that I think is both lighthearted but also like necessary to have is a conversation about, for people who are looking, red flags.
Oh man.
And
Yeah.
so I think that there's a couple interesting ways to do this. The one that I think is more interesting is getting it from the perspective of the person who is the same sex. So if you had to come up with some red flags for Christian guys to look for
And
in
women.
women,
Oh,
what
I got the.
what would be the first things that would come to mind for you?
Um, the funny thing is, I feel like I've been this person
Oh,
many
me
times.
too. That's why.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. A little self reflection. Ooh, in women. Well, honestly, what's crazy about it is I do think in women too. I feel like I hear this more about men because I'm a female, so obviously I have more of those conversations. But I feel like if there is a female that you're interested in and you're wanting someone who's a Christ believer, and really the only Christian thing you're noticing is that they just say they're a believer.
Mm,
If they don't attend church, if they don't serve, if they're not involved in the church that they're in and they just go, I think that's a red flag.
mhm.
I think words are very easy to say and actions are a whole other level. So that I would say also too, and this was me, this is so convicting. This was me when I first started dating Christian men, is I really had a very I felt like we needed to be together all the time.
Mm.
And what's funny is my first Christian relationship, we had a 6-hour long distance relationship. And so, but I still felt like we needed to talk all the time. We needed to call all the time. When Roger and I started dating, he worked nights, which was a whole other deal in itself. But even when he had to go to work, I felt like he doesn't love me as he's going to provide for his life. But I think if you're with someone who can't function well on their own, so if you have a female who is using you as a crutch, or and is already very dependent on you, even months into the relationship, that is a red flag. I think one thing that's really important is you want a spouse. If you're wanting a spouse, that's important. But if you cannot, if you're with someone and they cannot function on their own, and they're not their own independent person, I think that is a red flag. Um, I think one of the things is we also like we want to be married and we want to have a spouse, and that's wonderful to have, but we don't necessarily need one.
Mhm.
And so I feel like if you're with a female and they just cannot function without you being attached to their hip, I think that's a huge red flag. I also think too, this is going to be a cheesy Christian comment, but they also have to have a relationship with Jesus and the fact that they spend time with God. And I'm not talking about just church and serving, but also being in his word, doing those things. And having a good group of people around them to help them through that. I think if they don't have that, I also think that's a red flag. I have so many. But yeah, I mean, I feel like the biggest thing is words are are great and communication is great, but I think if there's not a lot of action behind the person that you're with, in their Christian walk, I think overall that is just a huge red flag.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I definitely think so. There's a couple things that come to mind for me from guys. There are so I think one of the things is obviously there are kind of non-negotiables that go across for both.
Yeah.
Of just like if they have a really strong sin problem in their life they're not dealing with, that's those sorts of things are. But as far as if you're going oh, this person is a very healthy Christian, and when I say healthy Christian, I just mean in the sense of they are, even if they are things they're struggling with, their first reaction to that is to give that to God. And they're actively pursuing a relationship with Jesus, and they're actively involved in their church after that. Right? Because there are people, and I've been the person who was in that stage for all those things and was still definitely not ready to be in a relationship.
Yeah.
And so say what are the things, when I think about things from a guy's perspective after that, the biggest ones that come to mind, one is he needs to be working hard at something. It doesn't he doesn't obviously say, I mean, he could be in if he's in full-time grad school, and I'm not going to be oh, well, he doesn't have a job at 24, but he's working very hard towards something. Or he may be well, this guy's completely broke. Yeah, but he's trying to build a business. Or even it's just doesn't this guy work 60 hours a week? It's that there needs to be something that he is working hard towards. But if he's not willing to work hard for himself when he's alone, that's not a good indication that he's ready to be a helpmate in providing a life for somebody else. The other thing is, we kind of talked about this already, but if he actually cares about guarding your heart, he will make his intentions very clear very fast. And then the other thing I would say is look at the guys around him, because a Christian man who's trying to build a good life is going to eliminate men who are bad influences on him and actively seek people who make him who sharpen him.
Yeah.
And if he there are those are also going to be the people who are going to give some input into whatever relationship you get into. I think that you would probably agree that this is a thing, I think, also for women. I'm just if one of the things I know that I will see now is if there is a woman that I'm interested in, is what are if I'm around or near conversations that they're having with some of their friends, what do those sound like? Because that is the way that I will be discussed.
Or if they're super annoying. Anyway,
if they have an annoying group of friends, but legitimately though, is are they if they're if they have extremely negative things to say about somebody who you see them in person being being
Mm,
differently with,
yeah.
that's like they can do that to me as well.
Yeah.
Especially if that's the way with their friends, because I have been there to see also relationships where it's like, I actually think if that, like, if if he hadn't had that person as a friend, the relationship might have gone differently, just
Yeah.
because of
Yeah.
like constant negative feedback being given to somebody or something.
Well, and just like into kind of our relationship. So when I had first been interested in Roger and about a year or two into that, I went through a pretty rough patch with just a relationship that was inappropriate and things like that. And it's really interesting because now when we started dating, I would always ask, and I was probably very annoying with this, but I was always like, well, I joke around like, well, yeah, 5 years later, like, thanks for taking your time, And when we really got into it, a lot of it had to do with what I was going through,
Mhm.
and we had kind of talked about how like he did not, he wanted me to be able to work through that. And not in the sense of like, hey, get your stuff together and then I'll date you. Nothing like that. But just very much like, hey, this is something really rough that you're going through. And you need to really be with God and work through that with God
Mhm.
and kind of work through those things before you, and honestly, before I would even be ready for any sort of dating relationship. And I remember really respecting that because at the time, obviously, it was like, whatever. But it was something that it was really hard for me to work through, and I didn't need to be so dependent on him to get me through it.
Mhm.
And that would have been a really unhealthy way to start a relationship, honestly. Um, and so I think that was really big, and I think that was really important. And I also think too, it's not it's not like you have to have certain like, you know, everyone has sin struggles and everyone has things they work through. And not saying that like you can't have, you know, something you're working on and not be okay to, be with someone, but it is important for you to be in a good relationship with God above all else. So, I know a lot of couples that are married and husbands struggle with things and wives struggle with things. And I think as you struggle through those, working together in that, but also at the same time, you want to make sure your heart is ready for who God has prepared for you.
Mhm.
And I think having your heart in the right place in that is really important. And so I do think that it is important if you are single at this time and you're wanting that. I do think one of the things is if you're so focused on this is what I want, God, this is what I want, and all your prayers and all your conversations with God look like that, just you wanting this and you asking for this, then there's something that needs to be done. And honestly, what that is, I think more time making your prayers a little bit different in the sense of like, this is what I want, but what do you want? And I think changing your me mindset towards God, because I do think people are like, I've prayed for years about this and I've done this. Yeah, if you've prayed to God over and over again and said, this is what I want, that's not the type of prayers we need to be praying,
Mhm.
because that takes out the whole aspect of God providing that for me, or the aspect of God just providing whatever He wants for me. You're essentially just begging Him for something
Mhm.
and not giving Him the glory that He deserves, that He is actually in control. So I do think that that's a big thing too, is your prayer life and what that looks like and what your prayers sound like. I think we really demand a lot from God, and who are we, I guess, to do that? That kind of took a turn from what we're talking about, but I do think having the time to work through what I was working through at the time was very vital for who I was going to be as a girlfriend and then eventually a wife. So,
Yeah, I think an important one is also like if you've been praying
mm,
for months or years about this thing and being like, God, all I want is this thing.
yeah,
So far, his answer has been no.
exactly.
So it is possible. I'm not saying that you have to stop praying that prayer, but you
Right.
need to also add to it. Okay, God, what am I missing?
Yeah. What's
That
going on? Yeah.
that like what is the thing that I'm missing that you have in front of me instead,
Yes.
or that you have in front of me right now?
One,
Uh,
how much time do we, I feel like, do we waste? And this is just as a general, and as a Christian in general, but how much time we waste focusing on one thing where there's so many other things that could be provided for
mhm,
us, or that we're so focused on this thing that how many things have passed us by,
mhm.
opportunities, people as friendships, things like that. I mean, when we're in the way for so long, I mean, how much have we missed? And I think that's a really important thing to think about
Mhm.
too.
So very I'll try to go a little quicker with this part because we have ran
We're
a
such
long enough
chatty
time.
Cathy. I love it.
But well, because I would at some point I'd like to have kind of a conversation about the idea of like navigating dating and the early parts of like the
Yeah.
actual process of dating and like the early parts of marriage and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I almost think I'd rather have you come back with and have you and Roger on at the same time and get both of your opinions on that.
Oh, I don't know about that.
But I just want the last couple of things I'd like to do is one, I'd like to give you an opportunity if you have any encouragement, specifically for any like young women who might be listening who are feeling any sort of way about like being single or trying to find a husband or anything.
Well, honestly, I think the biggest thing is to embrace the freedom of singleness. And not that obviously marriage is like, well, now you can't do anything. But when you're single, I feel like sometimes I think I took for granted the opportunities and the time that I had for different things. A big one of those I think is obviously like I would love for one day for Roger and I to go on a mission trip together. But one thing I think when I was single, like I went on a lot of trips and I went on a lot of things like that. And there wasn't anything to really think about. It was just kind of, I went and I think sometimes we miss opportunities. So women that are single and are having a hard time with that. I mean, I guess instead of really sitting in that, and I don't want to say wallowing, but like sitting and just waiting for that time to come, take advantage of the time you have. Go on trips. Go to different events. Go try. I mean, there's just so many things you can do. Being single and having just yourself to worry about, and I think there's a lot of opportunities that Christian women miss because we're sitting and twiddling our thumbs and waiting for somebody to show up. Also, you don't have to wait to be married to make a difference for the kingdom and for the church. And I would say if you're sitting there wondering what to do, start serving in different ways and find out something that works for you. I think those are all things that I would give advice for. Also, too, and I don't want this to sound like very like men are terrible and women are better comment, but you don't need a man. It's one of those things where like women that want to be married, obviously they desire for that, and I think that's a very good desire to have. But you also can live such a fulfilling life without one. And I think God blesses people in whatever circumstance of life they're in and whatever stage of life they're in. And I think that sometimes we put a lot of weight on the fact that we want to be married and we want to have a husband and things like that. Whereas really God can do some incredible things without one in your life. And so I would say, obviously, if that's something you really want, you pray about that. You ask for God to do what he's going to do. But also remember too, that just because if you're not married or don't have a boyfriend even, or not engaged, that your worth is not different. Your worth is not lower and your value is not either. You're very valuable to God without that. And you can make a huge, huge difference without a husband. And so I would say keep focusing on God in that way and keep taking those opportunities because I feel like God is going to bless that in whatever stage of life you're in. So
That's so uplifting and encouraging.
You don't need a man of it.
No, it was good. That was uplifting.
I think we really think that we do, and I love my husband, and I love being married, and it's been a huge blessing. But also, like, I lived a life without him before marriage too, and it is possible, and it's not an end all be all. And I think sometimes we put a lot of weight that we have to have somebody, and we have God, and that's enough. So.
Just like I like how uplifting that was because now I'm gonna go and mine's gonna be.
I was gonna burn it to the ground.
No, to single men who find themselves in this place. Stop complaining because no, but stop complaining because there is work to do, and I don't mean in the sense of like you need to go. We're not going down the crazy rabbit hole of like, oh, you need to be building things. No, God has work for you to do.
Mm.
And the work that he has prepared for you is not to get yourself ready to receive a wife from God. God has work that he has prepared for you to do for the kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
You are, I guarantee, not all the way ready for it yet. You're never going to be 100% ready for it. That's why you have to lean on him. But if you are not actively pursuing that, that's the first thing. He has to see you be responsible with the first things that he gives you before he's going to give you any additional responsibility.
Mm.
You don't get to set expectations on God. If you're a baptized Christian, you have asked him to be in charge of your life. Stop complaining that he hasn't blessed you more. You and I both already know the sinful nature of your heart, and he's chosen to save you from that anyway. Mm-hmm. There's no repaying that. Stop setting additional expectations for God. Period. Once you've started pursuing that stuff, if God decides to provide you for a life partner, look at yourself right now and be honest. Mm-hmm. Are you the kind of guy that you would want to trust your daughter with? Because if the answer is no, why would God trust his daughter with you? Mm-hmm. Sure. That's the kind of stuff that you need to be focused on right now. Mm-hmm. That being said, understand also that you were created with an essential worth to you. Yep. An inherent worth because you were designed by the creator of the universe on purpose. Put respect on that by holding yourself to a standard in your own activities. Mm-hmm. And also being actively intentional with the process of looking for a wife and with the standards that you use for that. Yeah. Way too many of you guys just care about surface level things. You're trying to find a life partner. And that is so much more important than any of the stuff that I know I prioritized when I was in college. Just focus on whatever the thing that God has put in front of you right now and stop trying to set those expectations to whatever you think your standards need to be.
If I could add to that too, I would also think about when you're looking for a life partner, because contrary to belief, marriage is not always lovely and happy and joyful. You argue and you go through things together. And I think that's a big thing is, who do you want to go through those things with? Because you aren't just going to be happy all the time and smiling all the time and giddy all the time. You do have arguments and you do have low points. And that's a huge aspect of marriage. That is a really big thing I think that we don't think about as we're looking for someone, for a life partner. So it's not just who do you want to live with and have fun with and go on dates with. It's who do you want to fight with and who do you want to work through hard things with and in those lower times also. So, yes.
I like that. Okay, last question. Ask everybody. Favorite
my phone.
Favorite Bible verse and why?
I put this in my phone because I never forget it and then I handed it to him. Yes. Okay, so right now I'm doing a study on Psalms, which is one of my favorite books ever. And so one that really stuck out to me just as the last few weeks. So it's Psalm 3:3, and it says, "But you, Lord, are a shield around me, my glory, and you are the one that lifts up my head." I think we look for blessings that are really big and really huge and huge life circumstances and these big things, but also being able to wake up in the morning, being able to just be alive and to be up and serving God and doing what we do in our jobs and things like that, like him even lifting up our head and also just lifting up our head in those dark times too towards him, I think is a huge blessing that I think we kind of overlook. And so as I was doing that study, Psalm 3:3 really stuck out to me in that. So
I like that one.
Yeah.
That's very good. Well, Cassie, thank you again for coming on. I really appreciate it. Like I said, at some point, I'd like to have you and Roger both back on at the same time, and we can have a wonderful conversation about dating and marriage. You guys have been doing it for a year, so you are experts now.
Yes, we are experts.
Know all the things.
We know everything.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
appreciate you coming
absolutely.
On. So, this has been the 3rd episode of the Everyday Disciple podcast, and we will see you guys next week. Bye, everybody.